Hello and welcome. The global crypto industry is entering a new phase of evolution. What was once viewed primarily as a speculative asset class is increasingly being recognized for its potential to transform finance through blockchain technology, Web3 innovation, tokenization, and greater financial inclusion. As digital assets become more mainstream, conversations are shifting from price movements to real-world utility, trust, regulation, and responsible adoption. At the heart of this transformation is Binance. What started just 9 years ago as a small startup with the vision of making cryptocurrency accessible to everyone has grown into one of the world's largest and most influential digital asset ecosystems. Today, Binance serves millions of users across more than 100 countries, offering everything from crypto trading and payments to wallets, staking, education, and Web3 services. Its journey has been defined by rapid innovation, global expansion, regulatory evolution, and an unwavering focus on security and user protection. India is now emerging as one of the most exciting chapters in that journey. As Binance celebrates its 9th anniversary, this is an ideal moment to reflect on the company's remarkable journey, the challenges it has overcome, the milestones it has achieved, and its vision for the decade ahead. More importantly, we'll explore why India could play a pivotal role in shaping the next chapter of the global crypto story. Joining me now is Mr. S.B. Seker. He's head of APAC at Binance. Mr. Seker oversees Binance's operations, partnerships, and regulatory engagements throughout the region. With more than 20 years of experience spanning law, finance, fintech, and digital assets, he blends deep regulatory insight with hands-on market expertise to drive Binance's growth strategy across APAC. Mr. Seker, a very warm welcome to you and heartfelt congratulations. Binance at 9, how does it feel?
Hi, Ms. Moza. It's an absolute pleasure to be on this with you, and thank you to Dainik Jagran as well for having me. And for the wonderful introduction to Binance as a company. I think you put it really, really eloquently. And for us, it's a privilege for us to be in this position. Obviously, when we started 9 years ago, the world was a much more uncertain place for us as a business. And I do agree with you, the growth over the last 9 years has been, even from our best estimates, has been spectacular. And we take it as a massive responsibility, and we have a sense of privilege about this. And so, for us, it's been a journey where we've moved away from originally being a technology-focused company to effectively becoming a financial services institution at the moment. Mm-hmm. And what we want to be able to highlight to our consumers, to our stakeholders, to government agencies, etc., is our role in driving crypto industry maturation and broader financial integration. So as we head into the 9-year anniversary, our theme is built with you. So built with you in mind and built with you in practice and in action. And we want to thank our consumers and our users first and foremost, because they've been at the core of everything we do, and we wouldn't be here without them.
Mr. Seker, what have been the major challenges all these years? Because initially, what we thought about the digital currencies and the cryptocurrencies was that it's just speculation. But now the narrative is changing. So what is the kind of challenges you faced, and how does the future look like?
When we launched in 2017, July, 9 years ago, right, there were fewer than 6 million people worldwide who had some sort of touch point with cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. That number is more than 740 million users today globally. So that's a 12,000+% growth in 10 years. We serve, and I'm not saying we serve them in isolation, maybe they have more than one platform they use, but we serve at this point 323 million of those registered users globally, and that's basically 43% of all crypto holders worldwide. Mm-hmm. And so, I'll talk about challenges and opportunities, right? So challenges has been growing up in this space while the regulation and laws have grown up around us. And for a long time, virtual assets, virtual currencies, digital assets, cryptocurrencies, whatever you call them, there were not many frameworks to think them through from a policy angle or from a regulatory angle. Mm-hmm. And as those policies and frameworks have grown up around us, while our business model has matured globally, we've had to obviously, by necessity, accommodate the business around these regulatory frameworks in different countries. And as you can imagine, it's not a uniform approach globally, right? It's a relatively fractured approach, market by market. And that's been one challenge. But global or globalization on a local foundation and local perspective is actually the heart of what we do, and I think we have coped more admirably than most of the platforms. We have licenses in 15 jurisdictions, including an FIU registration in in India, and we also have our flagship home regulator status in the Abu Dhabi global markets now, and we're formally regulated by the FSRA as a financial institution. So that's been the challenge. I think the opportunity has been, we've gone from an exchange to an ecosystem, right? We've gone from crypto exchange services to a much broader platform spanning earning, tokenized assets, equities now globally, and other instrument classes to over 7,000 US stocks and ETFs, along AI-powered advisory functions within the app and social features, all in one account. So we're moving very, very quickly into a broad-based financial ecosystem, right, which has been the opportunity we've grown into. And we've been particularly well placed to grow into this because we've come into this from a blockchain technology perspective. So everything that we do is scalable, it's verifiable, it operates 24/7, right, and it's instant settlement model. And I think that is a key strength we bring into this, Ms. Mara, if I put it that way.
It's indeed a milestone. Tell me something about India now. How important is India to your global strategy? Because Indian markets, if we talk about digitization in India, it's happening at a very quick pace. So how important is India for you now?
This is the perfect confluence, right, of India as a market and what I've just mentioned about how we've grown up globally and the kind of environment we've grown into. So, 12% of all Bitcoin holdings globally is now with ETF structures. So the institutionalization of this space and the broad-based recognition of digital assets and things like payments and cross-border settlement and real-world utility cases is now undeniable. Now you match that global trajectory with India's specifics when it comes to demographics, very digitally savvy, very young, very invested in their financial independence and financial future, and very open to new experiences on an app-based model, right? And I think you put those two together, and the sheer demographics of India, and the fact that digital adoption in India is very widespread. It is much more widespread across tier 1, 2, 3, 4 cities, and much more widespread from a north, south, east, west quadrant perspective than most of the large markets. And so taken together, it is actually, I've said this many times in media interviews across Indian outlets, it is a crown jewel as far as APAC is concerned. If we're going to move from 300 million customers to 3 billion customers, which was our next corporate goal, then India remains an indispensable part of this equation. And I would add this, I think all of the things we're seeing globally, right? Real world asset tokenization, stablecoin adoption, and as a specific use case, movements of this kind of instruments into remittances and merchant settlement and payments, all of that is happening in India as well, right? And so that is on one hand, from a product density perspective, and then from a regulatory framework perspective, you see a flurry of activity locally recently, and much deep thinking about what should be the policy response to digital assets as a whole. So across the spectrum, when you look at each of these verticals, I would say India is a key market for us into the future.
Seker, regulatory issues have been there, and it has been difficult for all crypto exchanges to really operate in a very tough environment in India. What changes are required to make it more accessible to people in India?
I would say a couple of things, right? So each nation designs their own policy framework to align with their national prerogatives. I think that is, we have to all recognize that as commercial operators. I would say regulatory responsibility and cooperation remains very important. So that already exists. For example, we're FIU registered. At this point, we do close to 70,000 law enforcement support cases around the world, from a track and trace perspective, from a crime deterrence perspective, from a investigative perspective with law enforcement around the world. And we do a lot of this with the FIU and other organizations within India as well through the FIU. And so that has to remain in place, because I think that is going to be critical. And we do this a lot better as an industry than, for example, traditional industries. Second is going to be education, right? So one of the challenges to overcome is how do we ensure that customers understand what they're getting into? For example, do they understand what the technology is? Do they understand which product vertical actually makes sense for them? Do they understand the risks associated with certain product categories, right? And I think through Binance Academy and Localize, which, by the way, is completely free information online that we put on, a vast number of topics, right, to do with Web3, and through localized education initiatives, we're trying to empower the users to make very clear, rational financial decisions, as opposed to kind of callous or like a carefree risk taking, right? And to be more responsible about this. And I think community engagement and product accessibility. So giving users the maximum amount of product suites available right, within the national framework is going to be important, because if you only give them product X and every other product category that is globally available is not available to the local users, then you'll see much more activity where they then start to use offshore, unregulated, unlicensed platforms. Because I think the market will always move towards where the products are. And so these are some of the things that I think we should focus on when we think about how do we build density into the local market to make sure that users are staying with regulated platforms that have a presence onshore with the FIU.
Education has been one of the Binance's biggest initiatives. So anything new that's coming up for spreading education to the wider population in India?
Yeah, I think the education is moving beyond just understanding the technology, right? Because from a financial services consumption perspective, to some degree, you need to understand the underlying technology. So you don't want to be sending assets to a wallet address on the wrong chain, right? So those kind of fundamental errors you need to avoid. But fast moving away from that and helping users make much more informed decisions from a portfolio management perspective and a risk recognition perspective, right? We think this is fundamental. In India, while the dispersion of crypto adoption is very, very uniform, the crypto literacy is not as uniform, right? And so we're trying to be very, very focused and tailor education campaigns in India to spot the difference so that we can actually empower individuals to avoid unnecessary risk taking. Binance Academy is one of those things that I've mentioned, because I think at the end of the day, at a user level, there must be motivation on the user's part to understand what they're getting into. But also, we've gone beyond this and we've done like initiatives in India, such as the Binance Blockchain Yatra, which is supportive of a non-profit think tank agencies in India to increase adoption, increase awareness. We've done university engagement programs such as Binance Case Challenge, and I've sat in as a judge on some of these case challenges and I've seen some of the quality of the talent that's going through the pipeline. And we also want to improve blockchain literacy and nurture the next generation of Web3 talent. Now, education is also part of the user experience in the interaction with each other. So Binance Square, which is our community and creator platform, is where we see a lot of organic peer-to-peer interaction, right? Where users can learn from other peers and other experts who've been in the space for a much longer time, and they can actually have conversations on what's worked and hasn't worked. At the same time, we are investing a lot of money and time and energy into AI-driven security tools. So we have 100 plus AI-driven programs that are purely on the compliance and fraud side, and we've stopped at this point about 10.3 billion USD worth of scams and frauds globally that would have otherwise taken place without these tools. And again, using these tools, we're trying to increase scam awareness initiatives and user protection features, so that at the end of the day, the user has the knowledge, the tools, the risk awareness, and ultimately the confidence to participate responsibly in this space.
So what opportunities do you see in India beyond trading? Because whether it's blockchain innovation, whether it's developer communities, Web3 and entrepreneurship, what exactly do you see?
Well, I would start by saying that one of the biggest opportunities in India is obviously the real-world asset tokenization space, which is one step removed from pure digital asset trading activities on platform. And this is one of the hottest topics in India, and we're very plugged into this space, and we want to be able to contribute to projects that are looking at real-world asset tokenization and to help them from a pure technical perspective to get to the endpoint of their project goals. I would say the other thing is India is one of the world's strongest foundations for blockchain innovation, right? Very young, very technology-first population, very strong, thriving startup ecosystem that's getting more and more confident with each passing year. And ballpark estimate, 20-30% of the world's Web3 developers are either from or resident in India. And so we believe India has the potential to become not just a leading adoption market on the demand side, but also a global hub for blockchain talent and innovation and services. And the other thing we see is significant opportunities across tokenization, as I mentioned that, digital identity, given that this has been historically an area of growth for India, creator economies, financial infrastructure that doesn't already exist at this point, and then enterprise blockchain applications. Now, our role is, given our strength in technology, is to continue supporting these ecosystems where there can be innovation alongside education, trust, and collaboration. My personal view is that the next wave of value creation will come not just from using the blockchain services and the apps that are built on top of it, but from the people actually building on it.
So what kind of user behavior trends are you observing among Indian investors compared with the global markets?
Look, depending on whether you align with recent announcements of some regulatory bodies, right? Whether you believe the public data or not, chain analysis data indicates that India remains a top global market for digital assets, and it ranks number one in crypto adoption for 3 to 4 consecutive years. And so you're asking about the patterns of the user behavior, right?
Yes.
It's shifting away from curiosity. So what we saw earlier in the life cycle was people, trying out one or two product classes, right? Getting familiar with the product classes. Now it's moving to informed participation. Investors the data we can see are putting a much more weight on education, really, really trying to understand higher value product classes and the differences between them, right? They want to understand platform security. They're asking themselves a fundamental question: what happens if things go wrong? Can this platform survive it? But they're asking it from a much more informed basis of looking at certifications that we have, for example, ISO 27001, PCI DSS, SOC 1, SOC 2, including certain and panel audit in India. They're looking at those things, for example, right? They're looking at transparency. The transparency in terms of disclosures, like are we upfront about how a product works, what the limitations are, and what the trade-offs potentially are for a particular product. And they're looking for long-term engagement, not just short-term market movements. And as I mentioned earlier, one key thing in India that always is of interest to me is the adoption and how it's working. So adoption is moving beyond the metros and well and truly beyond the metros. And so this reinforces the need for us for greater localization, whether it's from a language capability perspective or from an education perspective and a local needs perspective. And then also accessible financial education, because you don't get the same quality of education in every part of the country, right? And we're trying to level the playing in that respect. And the other thing I would mention is the Gen Z is shaping a research-first investment culture. So much more time is being spent understanding the technical foundations and the fundamentals, and being willing to kind of experiment across different types of platforms, right? Centralized exchanges are not the only platforms, and they're looking at how to experiment across platforms and build conviction over time. I also see a much more disciplined approach to investing. So you're seeing much smaller ticket sizes, including recurring attempts at the same product category, right, to build a deeper understanding, which I very strongly advocate for personally, right? You should build your confidence in your knowledge in incremental steps. And then we're seeing pure content demand increasing. So Binance Academy saw a 33% year-on-year growth in terms of access, right, from users in India. And this is a very good sign, because it's written format passive information, right? So the fact that people are engaging with it at a 33% increase year on year, the population is not just looking for sound bites or TikTok videos. They're actually looking for deep content, deeply researched content, and that's a very, very good sign in my view.
Seker, we all understand that no global company grows without facing challenges. And sir, what have been the toughest moments in Binance's journey so far?
The toughest moment always, right, is just deciding how you respond to the situation. What do you do, right? What is your corporate pivot going to be? What is your value system that you fall back onto? And I think for us, the biggest challenge has been, as I said, we've grown up incredibly fast and have been privileged to have a lion's share of the market in almost every country that they're operational in. At the same time that the laws have been trying to figure out how do we regulate the space, right? Now, over the past 9 years, we've had to deal with user expectations shifting, user expectations aligning with regulatory requirements, and then obviously our corporate response to all of this stuff, and also increasingly sophisticated security threats, right? And the way we've responded to it is by always prioritizing security first and foremost, baseline pillar, compliance, and privacy, right? So as the industry matured, we recognize that innovation alone from a product perspective or just giving customers what they want from an outcomes perspective alone wasn't enough. It required much stronger governance, much deeper compliance capabilities, much greater transparency, and continuous round-the-clock investment in user protection. So what we've done, and that's been the biggest challenge, getting all these things into place has been not an easy task to get through, but I feel like we've done it sufficiently for now, and effort continues. So today, for example, compliance is one of our largest investments. We put in $300 million a year into compliance, and nearly 1 in 4 of our employees are actually a compliance-related function. That is the reason why we're able to maintain 15 licenses across jurisdictions simultaneously while having a home jurisdiction license in the ADGM. And by the way, the license that we have in the ADGM is unparalleled, unrivaled by any other similar platform, because it covers everything from the order book, the exchange, the matching engine, right, the clearing, custody, and settlement functions. No other crypto exchange in the world is regulated in this way by a tier 1 regulator. In fact, the fact that we have a clearing and settlement function that is regulated specifically is also unheard of in the crypto space. And we've intentionally and willingly put ourselves through this to make sure that we are above board in this respect. Now, what about user protection and transparency? So proof of reserves, right? We have proof of reserves that users are able to use to verify the assets. This is something we tell users, like, verify, do not trust. We also have a 1 billion set-aside fund globally in case of losses that customers incur that is not due to their fault. And as I mentioned, we have AI-powered monitoring and global security certifications, because the baseline of any functional exchange is that your security architecture has to be rock solid. Now, one thing, every challenge has reinforced one lesson for us, right? Long-term success isn't defined by how fast you grow. It's defined by how responsibly you grow. And part of that is how you react and respond to situations that, like you said, those black swan events or unavoidable scenarios that happen to every corporation, right? And then how do we learn from that, build on top of that, and kind of make sure that the architecture for the future prevents similar situations or tangential situations. And so that principle of putting users first and always trying to maintain their trust and confidence in us continues to guide how we build products and how we support the long-term development of the ecosystem as a whole.
So Binance's 9th anniversary isn't just about celebrating the past, it is about looking ahead. So if you had one message for the millions of users in India who have been part of this journey, what would it be?
The first is, I would say, and thank you for asking this question, because I think this allows us to speak in a way directly to the users. For us, it's always community first. It's always our users first, right? And our 9th anniversary team built by you reflects a very, very simple point. Who we are today and where we are today is a function of the users and how they've put their trust in us consistently for 9 years. And our biggest milestones have been shaped by user trust, feedback, and participation. And to the users, I would say, continue to put your faith in us, continue to believe that we will understand the legal regulatory requirements in the market, and we will ensure compliance while making sure that the user experience is as optimal as possible. Continue to believe that we will invest very strongly into security, compliance, and privacy. At the same time, offer you world-class products across the spectrum at liquidity and prices that can be matched by no one else. Secondly, I would say what we're focused on, we want to make sure that digital assets are accessible to much more people by lowering barriers to entry continuously. And I'm very happy on that point that adoption in India is so uniform across the country. We will continue to invest in education. We will go much more local in terms of education initiatives. We have more plans to cooperate with centers of higher learning in India. We will continue to build products that are both intuitive, user-friendly, useful, and also secure. And we will do this across markets, across different markets, and hopefully give users exposure to a very wide set of product suites. Product localization remains a priority, and we will continue to invest in this. So there'll be a lot of initiatives rolled on this year, and you'll see it coming. I can't talk too much about this now on the back of user feedback that we routinely receive either from the communities or the VIP events that we hold. So my message to users is, stay very curious, keep learning. This space continues to evolve. Keep understanding and learning about the risks as we increase our security systems. Bad actors continuously evolve their threats, their threat capabilities and spectrums as well. So keep a sharp eye out and deploy common sense. Usually, if it's too good to be true, it usually is. If anyone asks you to move funds off platform, if anyone suggests that our investment is very, very urgent and needs to be closed by a certain time, these are usually red flags and not something that we would do at Binance. And also take a long-term view. I think it's easy to get lost in the noise when you take a short-term view, but the signals are there for the long-term for those who are willing to have the patience to learn and take a longer-term approach. Sustainable progress for us as a platform depends on what we do, but also on what informed users and responsible innovators do as well. So looking ahead, we see the next decade as a massive opportunity to expand access, strengthen trust, and keep building the community. We have already launched successfully. This is a new market. We have at least 5 more jurisdictions that we're very bullish on in the region, in APAC for this year. And of course, when it comes to India, we continue to work with local regulators, and we will continue to do everything we can to bring our best to our users in India.
Mr. Seker, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure hosting you. It was an insightful, learnings, lots of learnings from you, sir.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to speaking with you and the team again. And again, thank you to Dainik Jagran for having me and for allowing me an opportunity to speak to our users through your platform.
Congratulations once again and wish you all the best, sir.
Thank you.